Let's go. It's tea time. A little brief hiatus last week, but we're back in business now. And we've actually got a lot to catch up on. That's why I just didn't do tea time. I wanted to have the Omega tea time. And, well, we've got that right now. We've got to talk about player housing. We've got to talk about the Spear beta. We've got World versus World restructuring. Probably some other stuff as well in there that I just forgot about. But anyway, to unpack that, I've got some gamers. I brought Nike. I brought Lara. And I didn't invite Snub. He's unworthy of this. That's not true, actually. He's just not here. But we can pretend that I just didn't invite him.
He's currently covered head to toe
in slime.
In slime.
Yeah, he's practicing. He's doing a rehearsal for his slug stream, actually. So that's something to look forward to with the release of the new Raid Wing in the next expansion. But anyway, welcome everyone, and got a lot to get through, actually. So we might as well just get into it right now. We might as well begin with the Spear beta. So we've got our brand new weapons coming with Janthir Wilds. We've seen a stream of them, and of course now we've actually had a good amount of time to play around with them in-game as well. The beta ended early, but then ArenaNet brought it back. Very cool. Love to see that.
And I lost all the equipment I had on my beta character.
That's, I mean, yeah, that...
I didn't put it back in the bank, so I lost it all.
I think, yeah, we actually have to get that out of the way because it is a little funny meme. Listen, don't worry about this, guys. It didn't actually happen, but there was a quite amusing tweet and forum post from ArenaNet that suggested that you would like lose your items if you use them on your beta characters, and you could kind of like almost like duplicate items by taking them off your beta characters. Yeah, ArenaNet spread misinformation about their own game. Good news, it wasn't actually true. So don't worry, your main account is still intact.
You left out the part they deleted the tweet and then retweeted it later with like a typo corrected or something like that. So like they had a chance to fix it and they doubled down. It's great.
Definitely some good content there. But anyway, to the Spears, I would say that, you know, if I would say my opinion, I think it went pretty well, right? I think that like it's hard to get a good idea on how the Spears are going to work out because, you know, of course the balance was a little bit off, and you know, I think that we are in this interesting transition period where we're going from elite specializations to something that is less than that. Because if you think about it, right, an elite specialization is a full new trait line and a new weapon, right? That, you know, is the equivalent to what we're getting now. A little bit less detail on the weapons. And then, of course, you also have the utility skills, the slot skills as well, that come along with that. So, you know, like, I think people are kind of comparing the Spears to elite specializations in a way, and that's kind of skewing people's perspectives a little bit. But overall, I would say the Spear beta went pretty well. I'd say that, you know, all the Spears are in pretty good shape. There's a few ones that are a little bit less exciting than others, I would say. And of course, you know, the Elementalist one doing like 30k DPS. A little bit unfortunate there. You hate to see that. That's, you know, the Fire Wizards weren't happy, but overall, I think all the Spears feel pretty good. Actually, do you have any kind of opening thoughts on the Spears? Any highlights? Any particular interest in various the Spear beta that happened for Janthir Wilds? What's going on?
Yeah, I think that most of them, the design is okay, but the tuning is obviously off. And I really just sort of asked myself, would this be fun to use if it was doing 45k damage? And the answer is, for most of them, yes, it would be perfectly fine if it was doing 45k damage. Which lets you know it's really just a tuning thing and not a design thing. But that said, yeah, there's some designs that were a little weird. I think the NG one is a little weird in terms of it being a Condi weapon. And yeah, I thought that the LE dual skills on Weaver not actually hitting, so that's kind of weird. So yeah, there's a couple weird choices there, but they could very well change that easily as well.
So I only got to like try the Spears for one day because I went on vacation. I actually literally just got back. This is my first return. Is this TeaTime episode? I haven't actually been live yet, which is wild. But I basically went for them all really quickly, and I agree. You know, the numbers still have to be tweaked on a bunch of them. I think lots of them had very creative designs, you know, like interesting sort of mechanics, kind of elite spec-ish. And some of those I really enjoyed. I was like, for example, the Ellie one, I really enjoyed just like having this thing and you have to charge it up and then you have like a big attack and stuff. I thought that was cool. On a bunch of them though, my biggest issue was actually, I think, like sort of a UI issue. Because a lot of these have like, they've got like stacks or like some buff that you get. But again, it's like the really tiny little buff on the little buff bar, right? These are not elite specs, so they can't have like their own UI. Like, for example, there was like the Necro Spear. And I think the Necro Spear's got this really cool design. You build up these stacks. It's kind of like you're playing like Virtuoso, where you build up like the blades, right? And then you spend them. But because there's no UI, you were looking at this really tiny little number, right? So I think a lot of them had really interesting design, but they were maybe a little bit tricky to play. Just because, like, you know, the UI, you're looking at these really tiny little icons. So this beta, it really sort of like made me think like this is the biggest thing that they need to fix. They need to fix something about the UI here. Or maybe make it so that weapons can have their own UI, right? So that a weapon can have like little dots or something, or like, you know, like
They've
on
done
the
that
Guardian
before.
Spear. Well, I don't think they've ever done this for weapons, right? Like elite specs can change the UI, but I don't think weapons can change the UI.
Yeah, fair.
So, like, I wish that was a thing, because again, there's lots of interesting designs that I think are super creative and unique and interesting, but then I find playing them a little bit hard, just because it's so hard to keep track of what's going on. Like on Guardian, you get like illuminated or something, and then your skills get illuminated. But I found it really difficult to know like when exactly am I illuminated. You know, if this was an elite spec, they would just have like I don't know, there would be a big glow around your skill bar or something, right? Like on Mirage or something. Or they would have like on Blazethorn, you've got like the special UI for it and stuff. So I really missed that. I was like, they're making cool gameplay styles, elite specs, but the UI is just very hard to use. But in general, though, I was pretty positive about the spares. I think they were all, pretty much all of them were pretty creative, except for maybe a couple. Like the Warrior one is pretty basic, but I still thought the Warrior one was fun. It still like fit into this sort of niche that I wanna. But yeah, just I want better UI. Then they're pretty Esther, but the UI just holds them all back a little bit. It feels like.
Yeah, I think that definitely is a good point. You know, when we're seeing these weapons try to fill the shoes of the elite specialization, we see these additional mechanics. You know, you have, as you mentioned, like the soul shard, you've got the clarity, buff that you get on Mesmer and all this kind of crazy stuff. Yeah, you definitely have that. And the fact that, tracking that, you obviously get used to it, right? If you, as you play around with it more, that you kind of get a feel for like where you're at with those mechanics and so on. But certainly from like the new player perspective and like learning how to use it, it is going to be a little bit awkward that you're going to have to be looking at this, ever expanding buff bar, right? There's plenty of memes about that, how it, expands off into the side of the screen, and it's only going to get worse from here on out. I think that it definitely is a very much a large concern, right? Because ArenaNet is trying to give you a little bit of a telegraph. You have the shards actually appear on your character as the necromancer. If you've got the Revenant one is actually really cool when you're at max stacks. Like your entire character is covered in like writhing darkness. It looks pretty cool. But the problem is, right, is that that's all well and good when you're on your own, right? And you're fighting like a couple of enemies. But when you're in like a large group, you're in a world versus world situation or a PvE situation, you're not seeing that. There's absolutely no way. Especially now with the Elementalist Spear, they're going to put down their etchings. It's going to cover the entire arena. You will be permanently blind. Fortunately, we do have Effect LOD for that, but the poor Elementalists on their own, they're going to be blind when they're using their etch skills. Enjoy that. Yeah, no, I think that UI concerns are definitely a thing, and it should be a target, I feel like, for Arena to actually improve this, because like this is not a concern with just the new weapons, right? There's all sorts of little procs and activations that you have to track in a variety of builds across the board right now, and I think that, it will be very much two birds with one stone, right? If there was some kind of UI improvement. I mean, look, I was going to say it. People are literally making this stuff. It's out there right now. You've got stuff like Guild Wars 2 Clarity kind of existing, and well, someone's even basically ported weak auras to Guild Wars 2, which is kind of an interesting meme. But yeah, like there are solutions to this that players are coming up with, but I don't really think that's a particularly good precedent to set. I think it would be better if ArenaNet fixed it. So yeah, they probably should.
Yeah,
they
I'm
probably
always
fix
hesitant
it.
to use that, right? I'm always hesitant to like use an add-on like that, because it's like. Is this allowed? Is this not allowed? So like, I want, as a player that's not using these add-ons, I want nice UI to be able to see that stuff. But again, though, I do think that the spares in general were better than the soda weapons. I think pretty
that's
much
for
all,
sure. Yeah.
like every single one of them, I was like, oh, this got this interesting mechanic, and like the animations just in general felt really good as well. Like a lot of the soda weapons felt like we had seen those animations a lot before, right? So a lot of these weapons were kind of like, they're kind of cool, but like there was like the Guardian one, the Guardian pistol, and you put like this little symbol, and it's like the most boring symbol ever on the ground, right? But then now the Guardian gets like this really fancy, super gorgeous symbol. So from an animation and just satisfying to use perspective, I was pretty happy with pretty much all of them, I would say. I really like the Thief one with like the combos and stuff that you went
Yeah.
through. That was probably my favorite, to be quite honest. I think I like it even more than Ellie. But then like I didn't like the Guardian one that much, which I think you were surprised by. Like you rated
Oh,
into my stream, and I was like, I don't like the Guardian one that much. You were like, well,
yeah, I saw it was you rated it low, and that's crazy,
yeah.
honestly.
I think it's kind of a Volt v Volt spear, maybe. I
Yeah,
think that's maybe the thing.
I think that really is the thing. You know, I really miss Guardian Spear. I've been playing World vs. World a lot. You know, it's the restructuring. I've been going around, and I'm like, man, if only I had my spear right now, this would be so good. Yeah, I really miss that weapon, and I definitely hear like where you're coming from, though, and I think that this will be a key thing that they'll try to address with any updates going into the expansion, of course, is that, yeah, it is a World vs. World weapon. It doesn't really have a use case outside of that. It was memeing people in PvP because it was kind of overtuned. You could, like, annihilate people with it, right, and just, like, one-shot people. And, you know, we'll see if it ends up being that way on the release of the game. But, yeah, very much it doesn't really have a use case in PvE, for sure, right now. But I think there's a way they can get around it. It's like slap some boons on it and call it a day. No problem. It's all good. Make it heal a bit more easy. But yeah, I really like the Guardian one. It was really good.
The most important thing I think is the base design fun, right? Like obviously like the thief weapon was OP again, like every single time. They gotta do something about what is it called? The Deadeye trait that gives you initiative. They gotta do something about that. But yeah, just the numbers and the boons and stuff, they can fix that, right? It's just the base design needs to be fun. And I think they pretty much nailed that. I was pretty happy.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good way to put it, actually. I think that the design overall of all of the spears is pretty solid. There's definitely an argument to be made that Warrior could actually use a little bit more. But, you know, there's an interesting litmus test here that I found really interesting. I bet people didn't expect this, but the Warrior spear is actually good in PvP. And in my mind, if it's good in PvP, and it's fun to use in PvP, which there's very positive feedback from PvP players regarding Warrior Spear, by the way. And if that's the case, then if you mess around with the numbers, I feel like it can be cool in PvE, right, as well. Like that is, you know, kind of the point that Nike was bringing up at the start, right? If it did 45k DPS, would people be having fun with it? I feel like the answer is kind of yes, yeah. And maybe a tweak to, like, there's an issue right now with the fact that the primal burst skill is quite a long cast, and that kind of interferes with the quickness generation if you were to play, say, a quickness berserker on that build. But that's easily fixed, right? They already have it the other way around, right? Like for example, certain traits are worse with decapitate in berserker. Just make it better with spear specifically, right? And I think that kind of fixes it pretty well in that regard. So yeah, I would say that all of the spears, like, yeah, they're pretty fun to use. Like I played around with all of them. They feel smooth, right? Like, you know, you could probably tune up some of the animations there, like Revenant, the kind of the spender, like the big move, the finisher move of Rev, kind of feels a little bit slow, like the animation speed on like the ability you're supposed to use a lot, right? Like to build up all these stacks of the crushing abyss. It's maybe a little bit on the slower side, I suppose, but yeah, it is what it is. It's
a good time to flame the community's feedback on the spears. There was some. Most of the egregiously bad feedback came from mains, you know, people that are like completely married to one class, and they have, you know, what they wanted the spear to be, and then they got what ArenaNet delivered, and they can't look at what ArenaNet delivered and like objectively criticize it. They can only look at it through the lens of what they had wanted it to have been in their headcanon, and you know, and of course they're not. They don't like that. And then, yeah, then the other problem was the people that said it's obvious that they didn't, or it's obvious that these spears were all designed with quickness in mind. That was literally the worst. That Reddit thread stayed on the front page forever, and people were agreeing with it, which is really, really sad. Like I can't imagine how people could think that was good feedback.
Well, I mean, okay, look, being charitable, what they're saying is that, yeah, some of the animations maybe could have used a bit of speeding up, and I think there were some pretty notable aftercasts, actually, on some of the skills, right? And I think that's a very common pain point, right? Like, we've seen them actively trim this away, like, notably on Guardian, right? Like, Guardian Greatsword, for example, and I think on Warrior, too, right? Like, a lot of Warrior aftercasts have been trimmed away over time, so I think, let's be charitable. I think that's where that feedback is, maybe not phrased the best way, but...
Well, the thing is, like, if you look at the core weapons, they also have insanely slow cast times. Like if Ellie's staff was brand new right now and was in the beta, people would go, "Oh my god, meteor shower? They designed this intending you to have quickness." It's like, well, actually we know for a fact they didn't. They designed it not for you to have quickness. And yet that would have been your feedback, so I don't know if I buy it. Or like, "Oh my god, 100 blades on warrior, can you believe this new skill?" They clearly intended you to have quickness, or else it's terrible. It's like, actually, they didn't. It was designed in 2010, and they didn't have quickness.
Didn't exist. Well, you had like giga quickness, right? You had like old quickness, yeah.
But I guarantee you, the devs didn't intend for you to have it when they designed those skills.
But yeah. I think.
Yeah, that I mean, I think really the feedback probably should be like, these animations are a bit slow. And I think on most it was fine. I think on Rev specifically. Rev was the one where it's like, oh, this is kind of slow. Feels a little bit. I think slow animations can be good though. Like, like Necromancer Greatsword is kind of slow, but then it hits hard and it feels kind of satisfying to use. I think the Rev Spiral had the issue. I think it wasn't very strong, is my understanding. Again, I was only here for one day.
Yeah, it was pretty undertuned.
Yeah. I think
you have to jump through a lot of hoops,
slow,
and then the payoff is like 2 stacks of torment.
Yeah.
And you're like,
but then,
cool.
If it was like slow, but then it hits really hard, then it might be different, because people like the Reaper Greatsword.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's one of those things they can tweak though. That's one of those things they can easily like mess around with. I mean, like, I guess the meaning of the word beta gets diluted a bit, right? Lots of people are like, beta, it's like preview, and it kind of is, but in Arena does usually like actually tweak these things like a bunch. If you look at like Vindicator's first beta appearance compared to when it actually came out, it's like night and day difference, right?
Yeah, I promise you these will all ship on launch day of Janitor fully overtuned.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
They will all ship doing big damage.
Absolutely, that's what I want to see. Yeah, I definitely want to see some pretty big DPS, because it's fun, right? Like, nerf it down a little bit later. It's whatever, right? It's
everyone in World v World and PvP should be using them as well.
Yeah, just going crazy.
Go nuts.
I think that's really desirable as well. Like, just actually from a player perspective too, because it will be a bit busted, but I feel like if you, and I think you've talked about this a little bit, Nike, previously, especially regarding Warrior, actually, right? Is that when you log into a brand new expansion and there's nothing for your class, that feels super bad, right? Or like, the thing that's added for your class isn't super impactful. That just does not feel good. Whatsoever. Like, you want the new weapon to be kind of busted, so you're like, oh yeah, let's go, let's play this new build, right? All that kind of stuff. You want it to kind of change up the game a little bit.
POF launched. I started doing the story on Spellbreaker, got like an hour in, and I was like, this sucks. Actually, I'm going back to Berserker, and it was a downer, because it was like, oh, this expansion came out, and everyone, the Guardians are like super hyped because they just got Firebrand, which is like insane, and I'm like kind of like not getting the elite spec. I'm not getting anything new really. So yeah, it feels bad, and it shouldn't be like that. Everyone should feel like stoked to log in and play their new stuff.
Yeah. I do want to highlight something as well, is that I do feel that spears are way more polished now than the Soto weapons were at kind of that similar stage of development, actually. I think that the spears they're pretty close. I'm expecting a couple of tweaks, maybe some functional changes here and there, but I think they're going to end up more or less as they are, but with mostly numbers changes, because they feel a lot more cohesive. I think the choice to go for a two-handed weapon was a very intelligent one. It gives them a lot of room to make the entire weapon interact with itself quite a lot, and kind of build this cohesive toolkit, and also in a way be a bit more targeted. They wanted to solve a problem with a lot of these, which I think is really important, right? If you're adding a new a new weapon or a new combat feature to the game, I think your goal should be to address an issue, to create something new with that. And I think the Thief one is a perfect example of this, right? Because like Thief in PvE has kind of always struggled a little bit with you know, having a rotation, basically, because of the way the initiative works, and bringing back the system from Guild Wars 1 with, like, the lead attack, the, you know, the offhand attack, you know, and then, of course, the, you know, the finisher move as well, is really cool, I think, and that, there's a lot in there that I think can make Thief really exciting for players who like play PvE and all that kind of stuff. And then they want to add like a proper range weapon to Ellie with you know, the Ellie spear as well. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in there that's going to open up some new playstyles, and like all of the toolkits are super exciting. Like the Ranger one is super cool because you get the flip over skills and you go in stealth, right? I think the Guardian one is really cool because, I mean, it's just awesome. It fits in really well with like the current metagame in World versus World, I think, which is very nice. The Necro one, I love the combo element of it with like the 2 skill being reset by the 4 skill teleport. The 4 skill is reset cool. by dropping out of Shroud, so you have this like super interesting playstyle. And like this is actually a really important part of design. I think and because you know what's really funny? I want to use an in-game example right now that everyone can kind of even try out for themselves, see what I mean by this. I think what's cool about the new weapons is that they're kind of top-down design, right? Like, the developers go, you're gonna do this and this. They have, like, inbuilt combos into them, which I think is really important. And the example I give in the game right now is the most fun build to play currently in the game, which is Fresh Air Tempest. And I think the reason why is because the build has a structure to it that's inherent to that build, right? The whole like, oh yeah, you reset, you go back to air achievement, then you air overload, then you go to fire, then you go back to air, then you go to water, then you go back to air again, right? That inherent structure, that top-down design, I think is very fun to play with because it just has this kind of natural rhythm to it, this natural intuition on how you go about playing it. And I think that's so important with like combat design in MMOs. Actually, it's like inherently fun to play with that. And yeah, everyone should play that build, by the way. It's incredibly based. It's best build in the game right now. Do it, play Tempest, come on.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun when it doesn't feel like it's just a random order that you're pressing, right? Like there's this like you said, this rhythm, this structure to it. That is definitely a lot more satisfying than just like, well, it's the highest damage if I do this one and then this one and then this one, and if there's no real structure to it. Also, I think it makes it more accessible, because like, you know, there's sort of a easy sort of reasoning why you go through your skills in a certain order. I think, yeah, 100% agree. Helps a ton.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Fresh Air Tempest, like Power Berserker is very like it does what it should be doing, you know. Spamming Decapitate is like very on brand. Like Reaper, like Power Reaper is for sure you know, top down design. Like Gravedigger is exactly what they want you to do on that class, and and it turns out to be the thing that you're supposed to do. Stuff like that is pretty good. And stuff falls, and you know, I criticize, you know, Power Willbender and Power Dragon Hunter in that they have like literally the exact same rotation because the design wasn't top down enough, you know, like there should have been something more top down where they play very differently because they require, you know, different stuff. Like I think like Willbender got physical skills, right? Like there should have been something like you get when you do use a physical skill, you do more damage to the enemy for the next whatever seconds, you know, so that you're like actually like, you know, doing your kung fu in between your big bursts. Like that, it just should have been way more designed top down.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, guys. I'm laughing because I permabanned Mr. Mirror and he's really mad. And it's really funny.
Well, you're just a cultist.
So. I'm sorry, you guys are gonna have to say something. It's I'm gonna if you don't say something, I'm gonna have to start reading out some of these comments, and I don't think we can do that. That's no good. But
you know, I really thought that Muckluck mods would be better behaved. Like they should be a paragon of the community. They really should be.
But that's all I've got. Where are we?
I feel like this is one of those things we
Spears?
should not talk
Have we
Spears?
covered spears?
Yes.
Is there anything
Yeah, I
else to
mean-
say about spears?
Spears, they're pretty good. They're, you know, high tier. I don't think we need to say too much more about them, though. I think that'll do. What's next?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, yeah,
I guess
what
my last hot take is that these are the last weapons that we're getting for a while. I don't think the next expansion will have new weapons. I think that they are like kind of hitting the I mean, obviously there's infinite creativity. They could make new weapons, but like at this point, the weapons that particular classes don't have aren't necessarily very satisfying. Like Warrior Scepter is not going to be something that sells too many X packs, so I don't think that we're going to see Warrior Scepter anytime soon. And I think that there's other design space to look into, like trait lines, utility skills, stuff like
That'd
that.
Be cool.
That they will look to in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting in general how we got these like kind of fast, right? Because like the Soda ones came out like 5 months ago or something. So like the gap in between these sets is so short, which I guess is just because this time they're at the start of the expansion, right? Instead of like halfway. But yeah, it feels strange. It feels like the Soda weapons only just came in and we're already just sitting here testing the spears.
Yeah, I mean that's how fast the expansion cycle is, right? Like getting something every year, essentially. It's pretty speedy stuff. And well, in this case, it's only been 6 months, right? That's worth noting that the cycle is shortened for us because we had the weapons halfway into Sota. We're getting it at the start of Janthir Wilds, right? So it's super speedy. It'll be a slightly longer gap. But yeah, I definitely agree with Nike on this. I think that there's only so much you can do with new weapons, right? Like we're kind of getting to the point where every role kind of exists for pretty much every profession, right? There's a couple more that they could obviously do, right? I'm sure that they could come up with some stuff for sure to throw in there as well. But yeah, there's certainly more design space elsewhere. And I think also more impactful stuff they could do as well. Like if they add a new trait line into the game and it's kind of with the same vision as the weapon, so they kind of not exactly over design it, but they go a bit further than they would for a normal trait line. It's kind of like a special one. It's got some like loads of crazy mechanics on it. They make the Grandmaster traits like super impactful. That can be very high impact to the metagame and also to playstyles. Kind of like really introduce some stuff, right?
They could do like corrupted trait lines, or like your profession trait line, like Arcane for Ellie or Discipline for Warrior. There's like a corrupted version that has like a different twist on every trait. Like that, like totally changes the play style. That would be pretty sick.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think that also utility skills too would are going to be huge in that regard. There's like certain classes that a big part of balance, right? Like this is a common pain point, right? Is that like the base toolkit heavily influences balance. Like you have stuff like Mesmer and Guardian having really, really strong toolkits just at their core. And there's something like Elementalist being a fair bit weaker, I would say overall. Is that introducing some stuff like that into the game could also be super impactful as well. Who wouldn't love a new elite skill? Let's go.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool.
Imagine if they made elite skills actually like really good. Like actual like worth using. That'd be so impressive.
Yeah, it would be cool. I mean, it would be pretty cool.
That's one thing I missed from Guild Wars 1 is like your elite skill was your build around.
Yeah.
You started your build craft with the elite skill. You're like, okay, what elite do I want to play? Oh, I want to play this elite. Then every other skill choice was informed by that. Whereas in Guild Wars 2, your elite is kind of like, in a lot of cases, a joke that doesn't really do anything.
I don't think we can get that in Guild Wars 2 because of course like the nature of what it is.
Can't.
But I definitely like the idea of something that also is present in Guild Wars 1 was that elite skills weren't necessarily your ultimate ability, right? Not necessarily. They were just a very important ability. So like, in Guild Wars 2, they tend to be kind of like, oh yeah, a big long cooldown, like 60 seconds, 90-second cooldown. But in Guild Wars 1, you had ones that were often very short cooldown, or some even having no cooldown, right? That were just like a very important part of your build.
Yeah,
I think
or they were just like a better version of
another skill.
Yeah. Like you could have like an elite for Great Justice that like gave like 20 stacks of might and like Giga Fury for on a shorter cooldown or something.
Do you think they could sell that as much though? Like a weapon is very like clearly marketable, right?
A weapon's cool because it gives people things to do in game. That's the benefit of a weapon, is that I know I will probably make the new legendary spear, unless it's like a joke weapon, unless it's like, unless it like shoots like, you know, it's like a squid that shoots ink at people or some, and like, you know, like hilarious comedy weapon. But yeah, like, and even if there wasn't, think about how many people have made Kamahalo Kataki in the last like 2 months.
I
A
made it like
ton.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it added content, you
Mhm.
know, essentially by having spears. So so that is something they would have to think about with traits, in that it doesn't add content the way that a weapon would encourage people to make legendaries, which is a big part of their.
I feel like
endgame.
it's also just a lot harder to market, right? Like, I guess if you're like a really invested player, then it's like, oh, cool, new trade line. But if you're more of a casual player, you might be like, oh, wow, I can pick some different talents, I guess. But
You might have
maybe
to
it's
do
not as
it.
marketable.
You might have to do it alongside something else, right? So it would be like a new core trait line and new utility skills, because then you can show like a character casting a super cool spell as well.
Yeah.
That you
Then
can kind of have
you've
as that
almost done an
marked
elite
ability.
spec then, don't you?
Well, you've got
almost done an elite
2/3. You've got 2/3 in elite spec. Right
Yeah.
now, we're getting the weapon. This would be the other parts of
True.
it, but not quite though, because I do think that when ArenaNet talks about like really expensive development, they're probably talking heavily about reworking the class mechanic, right? They're talking about
Mhm.
you know, making Harbinger Shroud, like all the new effects, all the new animations, all that kind of stuff that goes into that, and like the design there. Like, well, you know, imagine like Firebrand, right? You've got to do like 15 skills, right? And like a whole bunch
Yeah.
of all the artwork, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we don't really know, right? Like, this is, you know, this is the speculation zone. Who knows? Maybe they will do this. Maybe they can't do this. Maybe it will just be weapons forever. It's possible.
Who knows? I mean, weapons can be kind of fun, though. I think that they are kind of proving that weapons can be kind of exciting. I'm pretty happy with weapons. Just, I also like that you can like slot them into different elite specs, right? So like, it adds like lots of new combinations and stuff. Although, I mean, often there's only really one obvious combination, but it's fun to play around with for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I think that, you know, once there's no actual content to use them on, I think that's also another big thing, right? Like, you know, right now we've kind of played them in a void a little bit, kind of in a vacuum on content that we already know. But I think when you're thrown into a new environment, that's when stuff like that, I think, can really shine, I think, quite nicely when it comes to like new weapons and adding stuff like that to the game.
For sure.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, appropriate topic. Let's go player housing.
Oh, I can't wait.
Dude, player housing is actually kind of hype. It looks really good. And also,
it's beyond what my expectations. They exceeded my expectations like significantly.
I think it's like, I think a lot of us kind of assume that like, you
It would
know,
be
we're doing like
half-assed.
smaller yearly expansions now. I think a lot of us assumed that meant they couldn't really do something really big, but it feels like they did something pretty big here. So I guess for people that are out of the loop a little bit, they basically they showed off this little they did a video together with PC Gamer. Basically, they got like somebody from PC Gamer to try out the housing system, and then PC Gamer did like a video where they sort of walk through like all the different features and like showed off a bit. I actually thought that was really good marketing. You know, have like the big reveal like on a different channel with like different people looking at it and stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of freedom. Like they have the same tools as like the guild halls. But you can scale your decorations. You can like freely move them around. You can rotate them and stuff. There was this moment where they showed off like this castle, like this little tower somebody had built with like I guess like floorboards and stuff that were rotated. It looks really genuinely super cool. Just the amount of freedom looks wild. And then they also had like a bunch of features. Like you can see, you've got this mount stable. You can see your other alts who you log off. You can get like a little display for your armor, for your weapons, so you can show off like your legendaries that you've got and stuff. It looks generally really cool. I think a lot of us expected that it would basically be like the guild hall system, but they went pretty, I think, above and beyond with it from this little video that they did. Yeah. Just
it's the
very
ArenaNet
excited.
thing. It's the ArenaNet thing. They when they like latch onto a feature, they typically execute it really well. We kind of saw that with mounts previously, and now we're seeing it with housing, I think. Yeah, I think it's really exciting. You know, is it a system that I'm going to engage with a lot? Probably not, but I'm really excited to see what people come up with. I will visit people's houses. I will judge them. I will, and you know, I will enjoy doing it. as well. I think there's also so much potential now, like with the restrictions being removed on, you can kind of clip things into other things now. You can resize things. Like, yeah, I think you're absolutely right regarding the most impressive thing was that tower. Like all of the things that they showed us in that preview, they'd like made houses out of different pieces of terrain, right? They made this crazy big lighthouse. That's super cool. Really exciting. I think player generated content is epic, to be honest. I think it's really exciting.
I can't wait
Loads
for
of potential.
the lewd mosaics.
Oh yeah, like
make.
in PoE, right? Like people do that shit. Yeah,
Yep.
that's that. People are going to do that.
People will definitely do that.
Oh yeah, that's definitely going to be happening for sure. I think it's a really exciting system. I love that they ported it back to the guild hall. That opens up so much possibility for like GVG arenas, for beetle racing tracks, like all this kind of crazy custom content that players are going to come up with. Cool progression system as well, right? You know, and I think that they're probably going to be using like decorations and stuff you can collect for your house as like the main progression loop on launch, as opposed to the legendary. I prefer the legendary, but you know what? I get it. Like, I think players are really they're gonna grind that stuff. They're gonna grind out the player housing, cosmetics, all that kind of wonderful stuff, and you know that makes some sense. I'd love to see them go further. And actually, this is my only concern, and with this is that I really hope they keep doing this in future expansions, right? Like, I hope that this is like a running thing that they keep doing. Like every expansion, there's like a new house that's associated with that expansion. They add more features to it. I would love to see them go even further to the point where you could add like your own kind of like custom scripts. You could have like NPCs that kind of walk around on a path that you put for them, right? Or even have enemies and stuff like for people to fight. You can kind of come up with your own little mini game, like a mini Guild Wars 2 game. That's probably never going to happen. That's like some insane cope for me. But look, I'm a Little Big Planet enjoyer, Roblox enjoyer. I love stuff like this. I love it when the game allows you to make your own little games within the game. Maybe one day, who knows? Like, and you know, it's not impossible, right? Because at the end of the day, like Guild Wars 2, they went super hard on this feature. They really wanted to impress and kind of make a best in industry implementation of the system. So who knows? But yeah, I definitely want them to keep doing it. And adding new rewards, adding new cosmetics, like new houses, like with every expansion that they do going forwards, because I think not doing that will be a real shame, actually.
I think it's also just, like, it appeals to certain people, right? You've got, like, these people that's... Like, I play a bunch of Final Fantasy 14, and there's people who are really into the housing in that game, but it's really restricted, right?
Yeah.
Like, people do all kinds of glitches to, like, glitch their furniture into the wall and stuff, and it's really tedious. And getting a house is really hard because, like, you gotta, like, win the housing lottery and stuff like that. I think it's one of those things where they can be like, yo, our game, you just get a house. It's not hard to get. There's no restrictions. You can be super creative. Like, I think it was such a smart call to just be like, you know, all these restrictions, we just don't do that. Like, we just let you make something really ugly. I'm sure lots of people are going to make some really ugly stuff. But it's cool that they just let you, you know? If you want to make an ugly house, they're like, sure, just go for it. But if you want to make something super pretty, you'll be able to do that as well, right?
You can do a 1-to-1 recreation of Mar-a-Lago. You can really go big.
Why would you even bring that up?
She said an ugly house. There you go.
Well, I mean,
I am excited to build my own little, like, I want to build like a castle. I want to go like full Minecraft, have like a big
Taj
base.
Mahal.
My gosh.
Yeah, I mean, you can go into creative mode by turning into a bee. So there you go. You can have that full Minecraft experience.
Yeah, no, but that's so cool that they went for that, right? They went like, yo, we just let you do that. We just let you fly. You can just build something in the sky if you want to. And it's so smart because, you know, they've surprisingly been supporting the guild hall system for like years, right? Like the guild hall isn't really something most people engage with very much. You know, most people are not a guild officer in a guild where they have access to lots of decorations, but they have all these models, right? They've been adding these decorations. Like every festival, they add some new decorations, and every time I'm like, I don't really care about this, but they got this like huge library of like assets that they can just throw in there. It's I don't know. I think it's
Dude,
really
I hope
smart.
we can share presets. Like if I see someone has a really cool hideout, I go, can I have your hideout code? And they give me the code, and I just input it, and it
copies.
It copies. Like it should be doable.
That would be pretty interesting actually if you could, or Man, I think this would be like a really complex system to add, but if you could almost like create like a little pre-made thing and then share it with other people, right? Like you've made like a little house and
I mean,
you could
look,
share it
the
somehow.
United Artists of Tyria just heard this idea and they're already charging 2,000 gold per home instance.
They'll like, you know, they'll do the interior design, right, of your home
Yeah.
instance. Like
Exactly.
That's for sure gonna be a thing.
Yeah,
Like that is a
100%
huge
will
thing.
be, yeah.
In Final Fantasy, that's a huge thing where like you pay somebody and then they design your house for you. That's like actually a huge thing in that game. That's for sure gonna be a thing in Guild Wars as well. But I
Yeah.
think that's cool. Like it adds this whole like layer to the game, right? It adds this whole dimension. Like people can be so creative with that stuff. I'm just very curious to see exactly the kind of creative things people come up with. And you're super right. Like not everybody's gonna engage with this necessarily by building something themselves. But you know, it will still be a thing where you get to see stuff other people make, right? Super creative things people make, or again, having them in the guild hall tools and stuff. I think it's super cool. I'm really excited, and I was already excited, but now I'm a lot more excited after having seen all this stuff.
I think the sentiment that everyone here is going to have is that it certainly exceeded player expectations, right? I think you know, we were expecting it to be good, obviously, but yeah, it went even further beyond than I think basically anyone was expecting. In that sense as well, and I think you're absolutely right regarding how extensible the system is, right? There's all of the, you know, all the assets they can like throw into it, right? And they've clearly designed it in a way that it's easy for them to add stuff to, right? And that's like a really important thing when you're adding a system like this that is going to be pretty evergreen. I think, or I hope so anyway, is that you do want to be able to add stuff to it in a pretty easy way, right? Especially when, look, let's be honest here, you know, this is, you know, we recently. ArenaNet, they're looking to set up Guild Wars 3. They're looking to fund their next expansions. They got the bikinis dropped in the game. We're doing player housing coming up next. I mean, goodness me. Like, they don't need to... They're going to be able to retire. You know, they're going to... Like, they can take a year off. Just not bother with another expansion after all that. And, this is obviously going to be...
beach volleyball to your home instance. You're good.
Yeah, the player housing is obviously going to be like a, you know, it's going to be a key monetization feature, like probably for the foreseeable future for the expansion. So yeah, like making it extensible is obviously very, very sensible as well. And also, yeah, you can even harvest all of your nodes instantly. Wow. How about that, guys? That's crazy.
That's coming later, though, I think.
That is, yeah. That's not on launch.
Yeah.
That kind of feels bad, to be honest. But, you know, I guess it is what it is.
I think that's, what's it called? Like, they also said that, like, a lot of decorations aren't going to just be earnable in game. There's going to be like a new crafting profession, but it's based on like a mastery. So I assume that most things they're going to sell on the Gemsphere will probably be kind of cool, right? Like there's already a bunch of chairs that you can just get in game, right? So I'm imagining that they'll be, you know, making some pretty creative stuff to get people to swipe.
Yes.
It'd be great too if you could, like, you know, have your own custom music track. So when people visited your house, they heard like whatever song you wanted playing.
That would be so cool.
It'd be sweet.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
Especially if you could upload your own MP3, so it could be like whatever you wanted. Yeah.
That's never gonna happen.
I don't think they'll let you do that.
There's no way that will
There's
ever
no
happen.
way you're gonna be
Listen,
able.
it'd be fun.
Anyway.
Ram Ranch.
Yeah.
That would be so funny.
Well, I mean, I can upload the Guild Wars 2 Ender Dragons theme right version. You know, that can also happen. Yeah. We can upload Bondage on the Breachmaker as well. Get that in the game, and then reenact the Scarlet Arena. Oh yeah, you can get like the AI Zojagar stuff as well. You can kind of get that.
Why
as well,
am I in this podcast? Yeah. I'm never coming on this podcast ever again. I'm out. I'm leaving.
It's good stuff.
If you don't think there's going to be a floor mosaic of a pregnant Zojagar,
moving on. Let's
and that's definitely
about,
so. I mean, look,
that's going to be day one. Sebastian's going to do that.
Like, he's 100% going to do it. He actually will do that. Yeah, that's a good point. He will create that. There's a 0% chance that he won't make that. That's going to be something.
Housing looks pretty cool, and we're very excited about it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of potential. We like it.
It certainly is. It's a good system. I'm definitely very interested in it. Big fan of the player housing stuff. Wow, we're kind of crunching through it. We're getting through it, huh? Actually,
we are.
I guess the next topic, the next victim of the TeaTime podcast today, is actually going to be the World v World restructuring. Actually, that is now in the game. It is permanent. Servers are dead. they have been entirely replaced by worlds and the algorithm. The algorithm has decided where you will play. And we've been playing around with it for a little bit now, a couple of weeks. It's the first attempt, and ArenaNet give us a little bit of input on it, right? Like the TLDR is that it seems to be working pretty well. Sometimes populations are misaligned in terms of when they're playing, and they're going to try and fix that, adjust the algorithm, and they're going to obviously see what happens when it gets more data and becomes more accurate, all that kind of stuff. I would say that it's mixed. Like, feedback is mixed overall. I would say it's a very complicated issue because I think some of the things that people are complaining about now were already happening. So like a big pain point is that people are saying, oh, it's like only guilds and private tags. If we're being real, that's actually been a trend that's been ramping up. I think it's continued going into world restructuring, but actually ever since the advent of private tags, things are becoming more and more Discord-oriented, more and more private-oriented. That's been happening for a while now. I think that world restructuring has has only kind of highlighted that more than anything else, I suppose. So that's like an interesting thing that's kind of been going on there with that as well. I think there are some like weird things with population. I think partially that's because they added new tiers. There's like a new tier to kind of like spread people out a little bit more. So that's going on there as well. So the population's a little bit weird. And of course, on top of that, the algorithm is still trying to figure out what the hell's going on. It's like the first iteration, and they're going to be ironing out a couple of creases there as well. It's an interesting one. Like, I'm not sure if I have super strong feelings on it just yet. It doesn't feel super different on my end. But I do want to give it a chance, right? I think that conceptually it's a fairly solid idea. Trying to make better matches, right? And trying to make sure that, like players are linked up with players who kind of approach the game in the same way as them and play at the same time as them is a good idea. But yeah, I don't know. It's, I have to see how it kind of shakes out, I think, with this one.
I think I am like the perfect person for this system. Because like I like World versus Worlds, but I'm not so into World versus World that I'm like in a World versus World guilds.
Yeah.
Right? I don't really have like a usual group that I play with. But for me, the world restructuring has been really cool because I can play with my viewers, right? I've got like my guilds, and then we all pick that as our like World for World guilds, and we all get to play together, which has been awesome. It's been really fun just having everybody be on the same team. So I think that's the big promise of the system. It's like, it almost feels like the system is more for like the casual people that aren't super into the game mode yet, just so they can play with their friends easier without having to like server transfer and stuff. But they definitely gotta like work on the matchmaking a bit still. There's a little stories about matches that are really unbalanced and like matches that are really one-sided. Part of me does think that like that's one of those things that will get better, because like this was like the first couple matches, right? Essentially the matchmaking is almost random, right? Like the system doesn't really know which teams are like winning yet. Everybody's just in random tiers, right? There'll be some super OP teams in the lowest tier. There'll be some super underpowered teams in the highest tier that's gotta like shift up and down until the matches get better and stuff. And just the matchmaking algorithm in general, I think, still needs some work, right? They did a post about this, right, on the forums, I think?
Yeah, that's right.
Where they sort of were like, we gotta like tweak some of these things a little bit. So yeah, it's not perfect yet, but I do like the potential of the system. I do think that's, as more data gets collected and as the algorithm gets tweaked, it could be made much better. Like that stuff is like relatively easy. They call it like the infrastructure. They just got to change the algorithm that makes the teams a little bit, right? That should be something they could tweak pretty easily. I think the main thing, just in general though, this almost doesn't have to do with restructuring. The thing is, I'm not a World for World main. Really, like, I shouldn't really be the person talking about this too much. But from my perspective, it's been fun. But from my perspective, again, this might be a super silly take, but from my perspective, I wish somehow we would all care about winning more. Like having some proper incentive for wanting to win the match. Like, this also comes to like those private tags and stuff, right? It feels like a lot of the World for World mains, they've been playing for like 12 years, right? They don't really care about who wins anymore. They just want to have cool fights, right? So you've also got this thing where like lots of people like me, lots of like casual Wolves for World players are coming into the game mode, right? And we're there together with the people that have been, I guess, like, you know, they don't care about winning at all. They just care about getting cool fights. And then that's, you know, you've got these two groups coming together in the system, kind of. I think it would be cool if like there was some proper incentive so we could all sort of unite a little bit. You know, the casuals helping out the Wolves for World pros, caring about the objectives. Because right now it feels like really people care more about, hey, I want to have the cool fight, and nobody cares about who captures Stone Mist Castle, right? I guess I
that
care
Maguma?
about
Maguma do.
Yeah, maybe, possibly.
What is
I don't
Maguma
know.
called now? Do they have like a guild? With
Well,
all
they have an
the
alliance.
sweats?
Yeah, they have like an
Yeah, they
alliance.
do, right.
Yeah, they're you know I was actually playing on Ral's Rest. You know, just yesterday. It was kind of the cloud. You know, swarming people down, which is of course it's people could beat the cloud. Obviously,
They
nice,
could.
you know,
They could beat
They
Maguma. They
they
just
don't
like
want to.
It's
They
not
don't.
fun.
Yeah, it's not fun to do. But yeah, I think there's some really interesting stuff that that you brought up there, Lara. Actually, I almost want to go through it one by one because I think you said something really interesting in the start that like it's good for like you from the casual perspective, and I think that is very true. Like this is a big pain point for Sneb as well that he couldn't get his guild into World Bustle because you've got to transfer, right? You got to pay for it and all this kind of stuff. But there is a really interesting thing. Like one of the biggest complaints that I've heard is actually from existing World versus World players who weren't in guilds, played a lot, but the server was like a passive guild for them, right? So like they didn't have to socially interact with people. They weren't in a guild. They weren't in a community, but they passively were because the server was that community. And that has been lost. And many of those players who don't join guilds, but play a lot, and trust me, this is actually a surprisingly high amount of players in my opinion. I think there's like a good chunk of the World versus World player base actually does engage with the mode this way. I'm talking about like veterans. I'm not talking about like, you know, people who don't play much. I'm talking about people who play quite a lot. And I think a lot of players aren't in guilds. Like maybe they're on Discord, but not necessarily, and they just log in and play, and it is that kind of playing alone together experience that Guild Wars 2 has, right? Like if you're in open world PvE, right? Like you're not in a group, really, not really anyway. You're not in a guild, but you're playing with loads of people. Right? And you'll certainly get a feel for it. Like if you look at the meta trains, right? There are probably people who are in, say, Darren's squad every day. And that's like a soft guild in a way. Like it's a soft community that exists without having to actually cross that boundary of having that social interaction. And I think that has actually been lost. And that's something that has been a bit of a pain point with World versus World restructuring. But I do agree with you entirely that your second point is actually that when you were talking about player behavior and how, like, especially veteran players interact with, like, the World versus World scoring system. Yeah, player behavior, I think, is the other really big problem that kind of exacerbates these issues. Like, as of right now, a lot of these players, they don't really want to... They want to play the game in their own very specific way. Right? Like, they have, like, carved out a minigame, which is basically the fight minigame. Like, they want to go to the fight spot, they want to go do GVG and do that stuff. And that's all well and good. There's nothing wrong with that, obviously, right? Like, nobody's doing anything wrong here. But what it does do is that it means that as a new player coming into World versus World right now, you're going to look at the Borderlands and you may not see any commanders, right? You might not see anything going on. Like, the map will be full, right? But you might be literally wandering around on your own. And I think a big part of that is because veteran players simply do not care about the outcome of the match, right? The moment that you start to incentivize player behavior leaning into actually winning the matchup is the moment where you're going to have people who are actually going to tag up and are going to lead these larger groups, right? And, you know, want to kind of, like, get people in and, like, actively bring people in, as opposed to right now where people are very incentivized just to kind of have their own little setup and play the game exactly how they want it, right? Which doesn't necessarily win the matchup, but it does essentially win them fun, which is what players are really looking after. And Rita did talk about this. I think Grouch talked about this a long time ago, actually, in one of the World versus World posts about how they do want to kind of balance the game by influencing player behavior. Stuff like making attacking easier, for example, to make people want to go after objectives a little bit more, making going after objectives more rewarding as well, all that kind of good stuff there as well. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, adding a competitive architecture to the game, I think is going to actually address a lot of the issues that players are running into right now with like new player experience, and also kind of the more social experience as well, because then there's going to be a very big motivation to actually have that outreach, to get people engaged, to get people involved, and it will just be a much easier entry point for players to kind of get involved with this stuff. But they also, and this is something that's coming up a lot now, it kind of like the LFG discourse is kind of reaching critical mass. I think we do need to see some systems that actually are aimed at helping players actually get engaged with these communities and get engaged with these guilds. Because right now, there kind of isn't a system for this, really. Not really. There's no like guild advertisement feature, essentially. There's the LFG, but that's not really the same thing. And you can spam on map chat, but again, that's not really the same thing in this regard. Because it is there. Like, you can get involved in these communities really easily, but you do have to take that step, right? You have to say, okay, I'm going to join this Discord, or I am going to, talk to people in map chat. And that's a step that, unsurprisingly, this should not be a surprise to anyone, by the way, most players don't take that. Most players will never take that step. To go into a Discord, right? Like to even join a guild, actually. Arena even gave us numbers on this, right? The average numbers of... The reason why they haven't added a new guild slot for a long time was because people aren't in guilds. Like, most players are in one guild, maximum, right? And as a result of that...
probably like 2 members.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, people do not engage with the system very much. And I think that improving that and making that system much more accessible to newer players, especially in World vs. War, which at its core is a very social game mode, is how a lot of these issues are going to be addressed, I think.
It's so crazy. It's such a crazy mindset. Like, I don't begrudge you playing the game however you want, but for me, like, it just makes getting things done so much easier. No matter what your goal is in the game, you can achieve it easier by being in a guild with like-minded people. So like it just smooths the road out and makes the game more fun. I don't get why you would choose not to.
I think a lot of people might also just struggle, right? Like the whole LFG discussion. I think a lot of people might struggle to find a guild that they feel fits them. Right, if you're not that engaged with the game and you're not playing that much and you're not sticking around in communities as much, I do think that that's a big downside of the system, right? I think you kind of have these people that, like you said, they don't really directly engage with a guild, but they still feel like they're part of something, right? They're still like, well, I am Far Shiver Peaks. Like, I like the other, like, they recognize the other commanders on Far Shiver Peaks a little bit. And again, it's honestly a little bit of an illusion, because a lot of like the super active World Full players, they hop servers all the time, right? They would like all transfer to this server and then they all transfer to this server and stuff like that. But still, it's like this sort of almost like passive being social, where you're not directly engaging, you're not directly joining a guild, you're not directly talking to people, but you still feel like you're a part of that group, right? Like, I am Far Shiver Peaks, and I know these guilds are on Far Shiver Peaks, and these... That's definitely something that is different now, because now you're on a team, and in 90 days your team will change again, right? There'll be all kinds of different commanders and guilds on your team.
Better get
So in
into
a way,
guild.
the system is better for people like me, I guess. People that are in guilds, but don't really have a nice World community. But for the people that don't really have a guild, but they, like you said, like the server is sort of a passive guild to them. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
I mean, they could just join a guild of their favorite commanders and mute guild chat and never have to interact with the guild whatsoever, and except when they're in World v World.
That is true.
It's not that big of a sacrifice to just, take one step to alleviate your problem.
Yeah.
And there's a fair amount of these like alliance guilds, I think, right? Like the old server communities, big guilds they make and stuff. But again, I think a thing is that a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to be actually in a guild, but they like the idea of being sort of part of the larger whole,
Yeah, you give something for people to kind of latch onto, right? Like it's an identity thing, right? You can be a part of this this blob, the army of players. Look, Maguma's the perfect example, right? Like they had their own very distinct server identity and how they go about playing, and of course it has been translated into the world restructuring. But yeah, I think you have to admit that something has been lost here. Will there be what we're going to be looking for is the payoff. Like, is the match quality going to go up? And it's really hard to say right now, and I think that's why there is a little bit of anxiety around this system, is that the results are not conclusive, in my opinion, to be honest. Like, if anything, I would say from my own personal experience, activity is a little bit lower compared to pre-restructuring on my end, but I have heard stories to the contrary as well, that like some matchups are like popping off constantly, like all the time, and that might just be like the algorithm kind of warming up there a little bit. But it's going to be very interesting to see like where ArenaNet actually goes with this, right? Like what is going to be the payoff for world restructuring, because like right now, the obvious payoff is very much for players like you, Lara. I think you're absolutely right, is that players that are a bit more socially engaged with the game and want to try world versus world, like that is who this system is a huge win for, right? A massive
for me
win.
It's been
huge win.
For me it's been super nice, but again, I'm a specific kind of player. For players like me who are like in a guild and they want to try the game mode with their guild, it's perfect. But again, there's a lot of people who don't fit into that specific category, if that makes sense.
And I think the absolute key there is, how do you mitigate that? Like, how do you make the system work for those types of players? Like, so that they find it easier to engage and kind of have what they're looking for, have what they're looking for in that experience. Because right now, if you don't play in a guild, world versus world is a little bit scuffed. If I'm being completely honest, right? It's a bit wonky with the restructuring. As it is, which is definitely a problem that ArenaNet need to solve. But again, I think that it all does really come down to this, and this is something that Sneb has brought up a lot in his kind of world versus world adventures. I think it's a long-standing conversation, right? In the game mode, is that there has to be like a reason to play, right? Like the problem is it's too sandboxy right now. There's not enough structure to the game mode. I think it's really cool that world versus world is this more sandbox-oriented. More sandbox-oriented game mode, but it does need to have some kind of objective. And right now, the objective does nothing. Like, all you get for winning the matchup is you get points that literally don't do anything. Like, oh yeah, you move up to a higher tier. But bear in mind, guys, people actively manipulate the system because they don't care about it, right? Like, if a guild or like a group wants to fight another guild, they will either PPT really hard and actively climb up, or they will do nothing and log out for the entire week and like actively throw, right? Like in order to get where they want to go. People do not care about the system at all. It's like just a vessel for people getting where they want to be. And, essentially that means that people just manipulate it, making the entire system pointless. There has to be some kind of motivation there, like some kind of reward grind, right? Like a title or something like that, or just like better loot, right, for winning the matchup, right? So the players actually view that as something to engage in, right? And then, the system will work in the sense that like, the best guilds will be up against the best guilds, like the mid-level ones will be against the mid-level ones, and the entry-level ones will be against the entry-level ones. That, in theory, is really good, because this does address one of the key issues of world versus world, by the way, is that if you're a new player, especially if you're a new commander or a new guild, you will get fucking farmed. Okay, absolutely farmed, because there's no skill-based matchmaking, right, in world versus world. So you can essentially have the equivalent of, let's say, platinum or legend ranked player going up against bronze players. That is a feature of how world versus world has historically worked, which obviously can be a bit of a rough experience for newer players. If we're being honest here, in the same way that ranked PvP is currently a bit of an adventure. Honestly, I'm going to say this on stream, by the way. We're bringing up Sneb a lot, even though he's not here. I got to do this for the content. Sneb is committed to playing a full season of ranked PvP solo queue on NA, by the way, and recording or streaming every game. So that's going to be content. Stay tuned for that.
Let's go.
But yeah, I think that there are some really good things that can happen with world versus world restructuring when it comes to that new player experience and that learning experience. But you need to have the actual competitive integrity part of it function, or a lot of these benefits are not going to manifest. And I think a lot of the problems in world versus world right now are actually down to the fact that players don't actually care about or engage with the system, right? And if they did, I think a lot of that would actually go away, and significantly improve the experience across the board for players.
Bring back the Guilders 1 guild ladder. No, it will be cool if there was like some prestige for doing well. And I think a huge part of like the matchmaking issues potentially is, like you said, like a lot of players do not really follow the same sort of structure, right? There will be people there, like, you know, when the system is like matchmaking a guild together and they're like, well, this is a really strong guild. This might be a guild that's running around capturing points the whole time. It might also be a guild that's constantly in a private tag doing GVGs and the rest of the server doesn't really see them, right? It's very difficult to matchmake this effectively, I think, because, you know, certain people basically don't play the objective, which is totally fine. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying people should be playing the objective, but that's definitely one of the challenges, right? How do you make... It's not even necessarily as much about balanced teams, but I think it's about having fun teams. I think it's about, like, the World v World GVG mains having fun other guilds to fight against. But it's also about, like, the casual, cozy people coming into World vs. World for the first time having, like, a tag to follow, right? How do you make good teams that have both? How do you make teams where, like, people actually care about these things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what the algorithm is supposed to do. Ooh,
yeah.
Ooh, who knows how that's going to work out.
Good. They're going to tweak it. They can get there, I think. I think they can get there.
Yeah, I think they can. I mean, I think if you look at stuff like what's the kill-death ratio looking like, how many objectives are these players taking, how many kills are these players getting in the matchup, right? You can kind of build a profile of what a specific player is looking for or what a specific guild is doing, and then you can kind of match them in an appropriate way based on that. I think it's possible. Like what time of day do they play, right? All that kind of stuff is what's going to go into that. But yeah. Definitely needs work. I really am very hopeful, though, that they will continue to iterate on this, actually. Like, they seem pretty committed to improving it. We've seen very consistent improvements on the reward front as well. I think that's, something that Roy was working on as well, kind of over the Soto period, right? That was really good. Lots of cool reward changes coming in. There's the PvP changes as well, which are also really cool in that regard. So I do feel fairly optimistic that they will make it work and they'll kind of continue to improve it. And get it to where it needs to be, right? Like, we all know this. Again, I think, don't forget this. If you're a World vs. World player in the chat, do not forget this. Grouch is a World vs. World player, has even played GVG. Bear that in mind, right? Like, this is the game director. He's passionate about World vs. World. Dare I say it? Cornerstone game mode, right? Those are his words, not mine, of course, in that regard. Yeah, I think that, I'd be cautiously optimistic if I was a World vs. World player, which I am, by the way. I spent almost all of the Spear beta just destroying people with my Guardian Spear, Shattered Aegis, Celestial Firebrand. Ha 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 ha. Very good. Wow.
All right.
That's it. That's all we've got.
Was there any other news while I was gone? Like, at all? I feel like this was a slow week, kind of.
Yeah, it was pretty chill, honestly. Like, I mean, we just zerged through.
Yeah.
We just zerged through all of that, all the news. Really, we just burned it. We burned it all in one. The only other thing that really happened, I feel like, was well, it was a slightly strange interview in MMO.it where. Now I'm just bamboozled. Oh yeah, you've got the sunken chest farm. That like that's actually crazy. You can farm like 150 gold per hour by opening the sunken chests. Great. It's crazy, and that's wild stuff.
I'm glad I haven't interacted with that.
Yeah,
all. I have no idea how to start it. I have no idea where to go, and I don't even know that. I don't know how anyone knows. Like, did they even tell you?
It's like in the top right.
Yeah, it's in the top right. Yeah. Just tells you to go and open them. Yeah.
I'm using block all that shit.dll.
Oh, really?
I don't see any of the text in the top right. Yeah.
Sounds like that's on you.
I like a clean UI. What can I say? I don't want to see any nonsense.
Okay, hang on. Oh yes, this is actually really important. It's a good thing we brought. Okay, here we go. Okay, this is important because look, this is where I get a little bit conspiracy theory here. But what did they add with this special event? They added like an infusion that upgrades account wide, right? So like you can buy this little infusion on all of your characters, right? And you upgrade it, and all of them on your account will upgrade. So this item that you can buy multiple copies of will upgrade across your entire account, basically. That is very interesting to me, because it almost seems like they're experimenting with something like that for fractals, and that would be a system that they would add to fractals. So one of those, some kind of account-wide agony infusion system, which I think has been sorely missing from the game, and is one of the most obvious free wins for improving the game that could exist. Like, look, I want to go even copier. I'd want to cope even harder on this, actually, and say that they would even do an expansion where a key feature, in the same way that we've got player housing for Janthir Wilds, and, you know, all the stuff that, you know, we had rifts with Soto, I guess. You know, an entire expansion would be like a fractal-themed expansion. Almost. That would be pretty cool, actually. And they do like a big fractal rework alongside some of these systemic reworks, like fixing agony resistance and making that way more new player friendly. All that kind of cool. So maybe adding like tier 5. But yeah, that would be really exciting, I think, if they went in that direction, because I would love to see them do account-wide agony resistance. I think it's one of the biggest pain points, and actually, by the way, makes the meta game way worse, because of the fact that it's kind of annoying to gear up another character for fractals and get the, you know, spend money on the agony resistance. People just play one thing, right? And they don't want to change. They just go, yep, I'm playing my firebrand. That's it. I will never reroll. I will never play anything else. So I think it introduces a whole bunch of issues in the game, actually, with the way that it actually works out. And addressing that issue would be very good. And yeah, I feel like the system kind of is maybe a little hint, maybe little hint.
I like
That would be so good. I mean, we already have account agony from the warrior, right? We do have that, where, like, you know, you buy the augmentations and you get like account wide +5, kind of. So, like, I know, it would be so good though, just in general. Like you said, like, agony, it feels like it mostly just like kind of hurts the game out. I understand like the progression where like you start climbing up and it makes the sadness gear kind of worth getting, but it's just such a pain. Like whenever I go raid, I'm always like, hey, can anybody in the group play like heal quickness or like an alacrity build? And there's always people can do it. When you go fractals, people are like, nah, only got agony resistance on one character, and that just makes it a lot more difficult. Also, just it makes the game so much more fun if you have like multiple builds, right? Like, one of the ways that I keep the game fresh on stream is just by constantly trying new stuff. Like, I'll be like, hey, I want to try Untame today. And I think it really hurts the game out that there's like this like limitation where it's like everybody wants to play this one character. So having that would be fantastic. I think we kind of have it. We have like the really expensive accounts with agony from the fractal gold thing, but having like cheaper accounts with agony that's actually accessible to people would be generally fantastic. And it will be like relatively easy to do, I feel, because they got the technology, right? For they built the whole technology for the fish or the fishing, the swimming speed thing. They could literally just use that tech and then like make it a reward, and it will motivate people to do stuff. It would absolutely be an easy one. They don't even have to do very much for it.
Yeah. I know, I completely agree. And making it kind of like an easy thing to grind as well is important, because some people in chat will bring up Fractal God. Fractal God does not help people gear ults, okay? Like, the type of people who have Fractal God do not need help to gear their ults, yeah?
Yes.
It takes like a year! It's like a year of doing friends every day! Come on, like, that's not the same thing in this regard. It would be like an entry-level thing, I think, to help kind of players, or even like replacing the way current infusions are, like almost like replacing them with ones that you just buy once, per character, and they upgrade account-wide as you progress through fractals. If I had my way, I just remove... I actually really don't like the infusion system in general. If I had my way, I'd remove the infusion slot entirely, replace it with like a cosmetic slot where you can put all your cosmetic infusions. You have like one particle effect one skin effect one outline one like trail one, like all the different, you know, infusion categories. That's in the cosmetic wardrobe now, instead of being an item. And then like instead of Agnes, you just have fractal level, right? Like, you just level up your fractal level instead of having AR. I think it's a worthless system that sucks, just makes the game complicated for no reason. There you go. That's yeah.
Speaking of, the patch broke stacking infusions.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I heard about this. Yeah.
So yeah, if you had like 10, if you're a big whale and you had 10 Jack egg sacs, each with a different stat, you could, you know, stack them and have like a crazy powerful effect. Well, they broke that with the thing, and conspiracy theorists were like, oh, they're gearing up for a system where you can only have, one infusion.
Mm.
So get ready. And I think that would kind of be good. Like, I feel, because I see these people at the Pinata, and they have a Chak egg. They have, because some of their rings have 3 slots. They have 3 Chak egg sacks. They have a Chak egg sack in every hole, and you can't legitimately farm that much gold. You can't do it. Even if you've been playing since launch, making 50 gold an hour, you can't get that much gold. So either they're dupers or they're giga whales. And either way, I won't feel bad if they get smited by ArenaNet revamping the system.
Wow. There you have
I think
it.
it would be a good thing in general. Just like you said, I don't actually like the infusion system very much. And I mean, there's kind of like the whole economy aspect of it, but I'm sure they could come up with something to keep those droppable infusions still relevant. Right? Maybe you can like throw them into your account somehow to like make the number go up. Like you collect the infusions and then you throw them in, and it makes the account-wide number increase instead. Yeah, it would just be a solid improvement, I think. And I think everybody would be happy and everybody would cheer about it.
I think the best thing to address, like, economical stuff with that is that, well, in some ways it could be better, right? Because they've kind of started doing this with newer infusion drops, is that when they become account bound when you unlock them, right? Like like the one from Suwon, you drop it and you can sell it, but once you activate it, it's yours. But with a Chak, you can actually infinitely resell it, right? And it doesn't actually get consumed, so that would help. But I think the biggest thing they could do to actually fix the infusion economy, because right now the big problem is with infusions is that if you want to buy an infusion, realistically, you buy it through a third-party Discord, right? Like you don't really buy it through the game directly. And this actually is really interesting because, one, it means that players on these Discords hoard them massively, right? Which it kind of has a really weird effect on the economy there with the market. But also it means that nobody knows how much they're actually worth, right? This is a really big problem. Nobody knows how much a Chak is worth. Nobody. Because you can't really sell it on the trading post, right? Because there's the 10,000 gold cap. So nobody really knows how much it's worth, which is kind of an inherent problem with how things are set up. If all of the sales were going through the trading post, then I think that would actually really improve that thing. So like removing the 10k gold limit would be pretty good, I think, to kind of address that particular part of it, or at least a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. But I think they would still, for high-ticket items like that, they would still sell them outside the trading post.
Yeah, because you don't want to you
don't
dodge
pay
the tax a little bit. Yeah, you want to dodge the tax.
That's why I have an apartment in Monaco.
Yeah.
I don't pay. Just kidding, U.S. government. I pay everything.
Yeah, but you also see how expensive it is to. I'm not sure if they thought this. I'm not sure if this is intentional or not. Do you see that it costs like 300k gold to max out your swim speed infusion?
Oh, it was more than that. It's like 30 million gold.
It's like insane. It's absolutely insane. I'm not sure what's going on there. That's some seriously long-term progression, right? You need like 1 million gold to swim a little bit faster. Not really sure what's going on there, but yeah, you need a lot of those infusions. But hey, look, it's good for farming gold, I guess. Yeah, exactly, 150 gold per hour. But you need to do that for a lot of time, guys, or swipe a lot if you want to be able to pull that off. That's for sure.
Such a strange thing as well. Like, who actually cares about this system? Oh, there was this thread on Reddit yesterday that I'm reminded of. And there was this thread about the gold fines increase.
Yeah.
You know how like on the Wizards Vault you can buy like this little item that gives you 1% more extra gold fines.
Really good use of your astral acclaim.
It's really bad value because, again, if anyone's watching that isn't aware, it only applies to like gold drops from mobs, as far as I'm aware, which isn't actually very much. Like, you sometimes you get a couple copper from a mob, but most liquid gold comes into the economy through stuff like fractal encryptions and stuff like that. There's not actually a lot of gold that you usually drop from mobs, so I think somebody did them off, and it takes like a couple thousand years to like pay for itself. But there were so many people in this Reddit thread going like, well, I am still getting it. because I don't care about gold, but I like to see the number go up.
Yeah. That's MMOs.
Which,
that's literally MMOs.
yeah, I think that's like a psychology thing. People don't even care that much if it doesn't do much. Like swim speed, who really cares? Like I don't care if I'm like 2% faster while swimming. Like I barely even do swimming in the game anyway. Talking to professional swimmer MightyTeapot right now.
That's what I have the pet for, the underwater pet, the manta or whatever. Just swim on that.
What's my gold find at? Let's see. How much gold find have I got? Wait. Oh, I have 247%. Let's go!
Do you know how good having that much gold find would have been in vanilla Guild Wars 1?
It would have been really good, yeah.
When every champ dropped 10 silver.
Exactly.
Oh my god, you'd be fucking rich.
Yeah. It's funny actually because I feel like Magic Find actually is very impactful. I think it's more. I think people maybe overestimate Gold Find, but really underestimate Magic Find. Having like maxed out Magic Find, it's actually really high tier. Like it's very noticeable how much more stuff you get actually when you have like higher Magic Find. Actually, definitely worth it. Definitely high tier. But yeah, no,
Magic Finds gear like running fractals with no stats, but just full Magic Find stats.
That was absolutely brutal. That was a very brutal situation because there's no gear check, right? So you had no idea if someone was running. What was it called? It was like what was the gear? What was it
like
called?
Pirates or something?
Oh no, it was
there was a couple. There was one that was like Berserker with Magic Find, and then there was one that was like.
Oh, was it Traveler? Was it Traveler or something? Was it like Traveler's gear or something? I can't remember what it was called. Magic Find gear Guild Wars 2. And yeah, that was probably not the play. They wanted it to be kind of like a cool RPG thing, but all it was is that it made people grief, basically. And just like they would like link Berserker gear, right? You'd ping Berserker gear, right, when you were joining an LFG, and then just swap to Magic Find. It's good.
Nobody will know.
Nobody will ever know. Indeed. But yeah, no, I think that watching the number go up, that is a classic MMO scenario. I think everyone who says I know, like, okay. I do not have a problem with people. That's a poor phrase. I don't think it's a problem if people go, you know what? The lesser essence of gold is trash, but watching the num go up is based. That is actually based. Sure. Well-informed gamer. However, if people start saying, ooh, you want that passive income, bro. Oh, yeah. Every time you kill, it's going to add up.
Take the 500. Yeah. Take the 500 now.
If people start saying that and go like, oh, yeah, you better do it. Get that gold. It's going to be big. It's going to pay off in like 10,000 years. Compound interest. Like, that is where I think, okay, we've got a problem.
The magic of the market.
Like, that's obviously a problem.
Subscribe to my e-seminar.
Exactly. Like, that's no good. We can't be having that. But honestly, I think there's actually no greater MMO pleasure than watching the number go up. So I'm totally down with that, in my opinion. Hey, I myself do it. On my main, I buy the gold find every season, right? Because I don't really need anything. And well, look, I mean, you get everything, right? Like, you get literally everything by doing the Wizard's Vault. It's not like you just might as well just get it for free, right? But yeah, it's value.
Gold. You can get gold.
Yeah, but I mean, how is gold gonna be the same as 2% gold find? How is that the same thing?
Well, like 2,000 years from now, the gold finds will be better, you know?
Yeah. Look, when they add mobs that drop gold, who's going to be laughing?
That's true. That is true.
It's going to happen.
No, but they could do something like that with fractals, right? Like having the agony number go might be kind of cool. Maybe rework the system a bit. Like, I think that would be enjoyable. Like you can just kind of push it.
Yeah, I mean, people kind of do that with like the potions, right? Because the potions convert stats and stuff. Like, so people have like these crazy hyper expensive infusions to get like an extra 2% damage or whatever.
Yeah, from, like, it's not as much of a thing anymore now, though, because they changed the stats, right? But it's still, I think it still adds to concentration.
Something so is still something.
Yeah,
People will go.
But
you know who made that change? You know who made that change?
Not a clue.
Solar did that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good change. I like that change. Good change from Solar.
Solar. I want Solar on TeaTime too, so we got to get that going here at some point. We got to.
I think he's the NCSoft West legal team has done him a fright, and he's probably not coming on podcast.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. We'll be content though. Anyway, you know, weirdly enough, like I feel like that's kind of all we got for now. That's all we got.
Yeah.
Talking about
I
Guild
mean,
Wars 2.
The studio is kind of, you know, they were out of the office for the 4th of July holiday. Roy eating hot dogs, ketchup smeared on his face, that whole deal, cut off jean shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the pictures.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's all that's kind of going on right now. Like the AFK farmer discourse is back. I guess that's actually something that's kind of interesting to talk about. Have you seen, Nike, that AFK farming is like giga profitable right now?
Yeah, and
They will clip this and put it on Reddit, just like last time.
I made like my AFK farming video like 2 years ago. It still gets comments. People still comment on it.
Okay.
It's like it's the most engagement farming video ever.
Okay, I'm look. I don't want to scare anyone here. Okay, I don't want to scare anyone, but actually I do. Did you guys know there's like an underground AFK farmer network that like they instantly reply to all AFK farmer posts defending it? And like they're in my YouTube, because I talked to Jaffers about this. He did a really cool video actually, kind of investigating AFK farmers and like looking at all their farms and trying to count how many accounts there are and all this kind of stuff. Really interesting stuff actually. And it turns out that like if you run around farming choyas in corner, it's like 20 gold an hour right now, based. Okay, that's content right there.
What would it be if they nerfed the trophy thing? From the
I think it would still be high because like the core amount of the gold is like getting the elaborate totems, crystalline dust, right? Yeah. Because the big thing about AFK farming right now, when we were talking about it, it was pretty pathetic, right? It was like, you know, like 5 gold, 8 gold an hour, like in that kind of range. But now it's more like, you know, 10 gold, 15 gold, even 20 gold in some cases, because of how expensive materials are right now. Like materials have gone up like double, even triple in some cases, over the, you know, kind of like over Soto, right? And this means that all of those material drops are kind of insane, to be honest. Look, it's kind of an interesting thing, right? Like, it's like running around like farming mobs. I think that's kind of like a bit of an MMO thing, right? You just grind some mobs, get some gold per hour. Maybe not so good with AFK.
Yeah, go kill Tengu to get feathers.
Exactly. So Guild Wars 1, that's some Guild Wars 1 gameplay right there, right? I think, you know, realistically, should ArenaNet fix it? Yeah, they should do some diminishing returns. If you literally just don't move, you probably shouldn't get loot. Let's be honest. Like that's probably a little bit silly. But yeah, back to the Cabal. The AFK farmer Cabal is fucked up. They are everywhere. They immediately commented on my video calling me a snitch and saying that, like, you know, I'm just exposing people for making money. And also stuff like AFK farming, like, improved my gameplay experience. AFK farming changed my life. Like, stuff that's actually that extreme and that unhinged. And these guys, I'm saying it, they are everywhere. They are in every Reddit thread. They're in every YouTube video about this. It's actually crazy. There's like a full operation that they have going on. There's probably like a secret Discord somewhere where they're like sharing all like the best farms and stuff like that, the best like builds, because they all run the same builds actually. This is one thing that people are wrong about, by the way. People say just put like champions there to kill them. This is actually kind of cope, because what you guys don't understand is that if you did this, the AFK farms would evolve. They would create like the ultimate AFK destroyer build that would actually be able to defeat the champions while AFK. I've actually got a video of this kind of happening.
You'd just
actually
be bringing them more loot.
Yeah, you'd be feeding them. Yeah, you'd be literally feeding them a champ bag at some point at this stage. Because like if you on the Lake Doric farm, if you now it's at the point where there are so many like minion monsters, and the minion monster build is kind of pretty okay actually, that even if you lure the jade armor over to them, right, they'll actually kill it. They'll actually kill the jade armors because the minions will be too powerful. They'll just get destroyed. It's like these guys, they're crazy. Like they have like full discords, full builds set up. They're a scary force, right? You got to watch out. Like you got to watch out. If you're making videos in AFK farmers, they're gonna come for you. They are gonna come for you, 100%.
I mean, the thing is though, like they're just gonna make it a little bit harder, because the thing is though, like I think quote unquote low intensity farming is pretty fun, right? That's kind of like the old Gilters one, like you kill mobs, you get stuff. But the issue is that people are breaking TOS by full on doing unattended gameplay, right? Like they'll turn on their PC and they'll leave, which is very much against TOS, but people still do it. Because I think the thing is, if they just make it a little bit harder, it would like massively fix it. Like if you just make it a tiny bit harder, like you said, like if you don't move for a certain amount of time, like you just stop getting loot, that would like solve 90% of the issue. Like some people are like, oh, but then they'll start building, and sure, some people will start building, but I feel like for a lot of people that is like further, you know, like mentally. When they're like, well, like I'm just leaving the game on.
People are not
feel
willing
like,
to
I can. Yeah, people are like, oh, technically it's against TOS, but they're like, oh, I'll probably get away with it. They don't care too much. They're not too scared. But most people are a lot more intimidated by straight up using botting software. That's like, because again, it's like you've got this line, right? And like that's very clearly over the line. Whereas the AFK farming, it's like a bit fuzzy, right? The TOS is pretty clear, but people are like, well, I'm still at my PC. I'm still like looking at it, you know, and then they sort of operate in this like little gray area. But if you make it a little bit harder, they're gonna move into the clearly botting category, and then I think that would scare a lot of people off. I'm surprised they haven't done it because it's been a thing for like years now, right? Like we were talking about this on TeaTime like years ago. I mean, I guess like it might be difficult from an architecture perspective, but in my head, it's literally like if you don't move for a certain amount of time, like you set some flag and then you don't drop anything, right? Like to me, it feels like it would be pretty easy to have like a very easy, very simple little fix that would like make 90% of them quit AFK farming. And I'm so surprised that they haven't done that.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it's just not that much of a big deal, realistically.
Yeah.
Like it definitely is a bit of an eyesore, and it looks a bit goofy. And I think they definitely should fix it if they have like the development time. But like, it's gonna come down to this: like, what would you rather? Would you rather them fix AFK farming, or like make the game better with like some cool quality of life, or like add a new feature? And I'm not gonna lie, some people are like, they hate them so much that they'd say like, yeah, remove AFK farming. But I feel like the majority of player base, and I think arguably the correct answer, quote unquote, is just make the game better, right? Like, and like just ignore these people. It's like, it's whatever. It's just, you know, they're doing their thing, they're gaming, right? You know, they're going crazy. But look, you know, when it comes down to like, oh, but they're getting gold for free. Look, you could buy literally 10,000 gold every day in this game. Like, you just always got to remember that. Like, that's why the way that I'm kind of like, I don't really give a shit about it, because it's like, you can buy gold in this game. Like, AFK farming? You guys are worried about AFK farming? Dude, what about AFK swiping? Okay? Like, what about that?
Well,
that's the real goal per hour.
They're funding the development of the game, I suppose. You know? No, but I agree. It's not really that much of a big deal. It's just, I guess it just feels a bit silly that there's people that are pretty blatantly breaking the TOS and getting away with it. If that makes sense. You know, like the TOS is pretty clear. Like unattended gameplay, you should read the policy. They have a very clear policy on that. And then those people just kind of ignore it, and that just feels a bit weird. It just feels a bit weird. And like you said, it looks bad when you run into it. But realistically, like how many times do I run into the AFK farms? Like once every month or something, I'll see one. Like it's not really...
Yeah, they're in specific places, right? Like they're kind of out of the way most of the time. It's like, it's not like a crazy big deal, but you know, it is pretty goofy. You know, they should probably fix that at some point. But I just thought it was funny, especially the Cabal. I like the Cabal. That is content to me. Like they just materialize out of nowhere. I just like the idea that there's like somewhere there's an AFK farmer community Discord where they like discuss all like the sickest AFK farm builds and like, the sickest gold per hour. Like, man, and it is kind of mind-boggling. Like
you should watch like your view count. Like the second you started talking about it, maybe the view count went up like 20 immediately. You know.
And I think, you know, the thing that really is the interesting question is actually multi-boxing, to be honest. Because like the numbers are kind of staggering. Like Jaffa recorded this guy AFK farming every single day with 29 accounts, right? And he calculated that approximately, give or take, in a month, that guy earned 100k gold. That is fucking insane, right? Like, if you think about it.
I will take about this. My whole take is I think that multi-boxing probably should not be allowed. Because it kind of is. Like, as far as I understand, you are allowed to multi-box, but you're not allowed to, like, control multiple at the same time. Yeah. Right? You're not allowed to, like, press one button and then on multiple accounts you start moving. But as long as you're controlling one at a time, I think it's allowed. But like, this is something that actually bothers me. Like, the AFK farmers don't bother me that much. But what does bother me is when I go to Dragon's End, and then there's like somebody on 10 accounts that are like just auto-attacking, like trying to leech the gold from Dragon's End and like making it fail.
It's fucking cursed.
Like that does bother me. Like,
those people should be AFK and killing Troyas, not.
That bothers me less. They're not making my meta events fail if they do it.
It is absolutely cursed. Yeah.
Maybe just... maybe they don't have to ban the multi-boxing entirely, but just be a little bit more strict on doing it in like content like that might be good.
Yeah.
But again, it's not a huge deal to be quite honest with
Leeching.
you.
Leeches. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, multi-boxing is like the true, like, and well, ultimately, like, event leeching, I think is the really impactful stuff. And it's really hard to, like, write policy for that, I think, for ArenaNet. It's you have to kind of do a bit of a vibe check, I feel like, a lot of the time. But it definitely is a bit of an issue, right? Like, again, I've heard, like, horror stories of convergences that get leached pretty often with, like, people multi-boxing, Dragon's Ends where people are multi-boxing. I think the Epoch meta, in particular, is, like, one that I think people are struggling with right now because it's got kind of a lot of health, so if there's people AFK, then it kind of goes badly, right? And there's not enough DPS to get it, so there's that on there as well. But, yeah, I don't know. It's something. It's definitely an interesting
It's a
kind of
difficult one to solve for sure, right? It's a difficult one to solve because it's also like hard to detect, right? Like somebody might be really engaged, but maybe they're just like kind of new to the game, you know? And somebody might just be leeching, right? Like it's also it's kind of cozy that you know you can do a meta event while you're watching Netflix and you're not paying that much attention, but. Again, the line, like, where does, like, oh, you're kind of paying a little bit of attention, where does that become
exactly
leeching?
It's really hard.
It's a very gray line from, like, oh, I'm kind of chilling to, like, I'm straight up leeching.
And what if someone's gameplay is what if someone's just really
what
bad
if someone
at the game?
is just
right? Like,
they're so bad that you can't
exactly.
distinguish them between.
I mean, you don't want to like those are paying customers. You don't want them to like.
I mean, I've seen a streamer on Twitch doing Dragon's End, and he was playing Necro and he had a Scepter, and Necro Scepter requires a target to actually hit.
Oh
and
no!
He auto attacked nothing on Scepter, and that's all he did while talking to chat is auto attacked air the entire
Honestly,
C1, and while complaining about how overtuned the fight is and how it's too hard.
To be fair, when you're streaming, you get distracted, okay? You're like looking at chat. Like that could have been me for sure. I will defend this streamer using Scepter.
Yeah. Well, that was an interesting little tangent, I guess. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but
bringing back like the good old conversation topics, you know, like when there was like kind of content drought and we had like nothing to talk about.
There's no hope.
Exactly, we're talking
big
about
hype this week.
Yeah, I think we're gonna be getting some news pretty soon. Actually, I'd expect some stuff because look, it's really not that long until the expansion. And I guess this could be an interesting kind of closing topic actually to discuss. Like I do really hope that ArenaNet kind of goes hard on the promotion here because they're kind of up against it right now, in my opinion, in terms of hype. Like we've had the Destiny raid release was recent. We've got Final Fantasy's expansion is dropping now. As well. Of course, Guild Wars 2 is kind of next on the block, on August 20th. The War Within World of Warcraft expansion is 2 days later, by the way. So, I really want to see them go hard on this, you know? I want to see some hype. From ArenaNet on this,
like gameplay stream.
Yeah, I want. Yeah, I do want to see. I do want to. Yeah, look, I'm going to say it unironically. Yeah, I do mean I want to see a gameplay stream. I want them to get us hyped about the Titans, right? I want them to show us like some sick ass open world bosses going on there, right? I want them to tease us a little bit with the story, like what's going to happen, right? Some of like the new stuff that you can do, right, and all this kind of stuff. I think it's going to be a bit tricky for Guild Wars 2 because I do perceive Janthir Wilds as being pretty light on content on launch. It's ultimately going to be the story, which is going to be about 4 hours-ish, I think, and then 2 maps. And that's kind of the only content that exists. There's no strike missions on launch this time, or anything like that. And I think convergences are coming later as well. So I think it's going to be a little bit light on gameplay, but I still want to see them hype it up. Like the open world metas, in my opinion, they need to be fucking good, right? I want to see these open world metas be absolute fire. I want to be grinding that every day on the launch of the expansion. That would be my ultimate fantasy for Janthir Wilds. But yeah, I do want to see them do some promotion, right? We know there's some PvP news coming up, actually. We don't know when. They haven't actually talked about that since. They just said, oh yeah, there's going to be a PvP news thing happening in July at some point. But who knows when that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of weeks before the expansion getting into August. I really want to see them hype up all the features, like show us the content. I do think a big weakness in ArenaNet's marketing is that they just don't seem to have a good way to hype up their content very well until it actually launches. Like, oh, we don't want to spoil the story. Oh, we don't want to show you, like, Dragon's End being literally the sickest boss in the entire game. We're just going to show you this rock instead. Like, oh, Arborstone gameplay. There's a jumping puzzle in Arborstone that you can use mounts on. What the fuck? Okay, this is unhinged. This is unhinged behavior, to be honest. They need to hype up their game. Don't show me a rock. Show me content. Show me gameplay. I don't want to see rocks. I don't want to see, like, the major selling point of Guild Wars 2 Janthir is like the texture on the rocks. That's unacceptable.
I think they nailed it with that housing reveal. Genuinely. Like, that was a good video. And that was, like, on PC Gamer and stuff. Lots of people saw that outside of the community. I wonder how many views it got, actually. Hold on. PC Gamer, Janthir Vault's housing.
Yeah, because you said this at the start of the show, and I allow me to slightly disagree. Why didn't ANET do it? Okay, why did they?
Yeah.
Why are they using third-party media to do their content? That should happen. Don't get me wrong. They absolutely should be inviting people to do demos of this stuff in the gaming media.
Like a stream.
Yeah, where they show it.
Goes
yeah,
through the housing.
Yeah. It should have me both. Right?
I want to see. I mean, we could have Roy, putting together like an onion ring. Right, like he'd be building a Sonic, right? Like in the player housing setup,
with
and
the drive-through.
Exactly, with the drive-through, he could go in there and
come in on your war claw and get your onion rings.
Get your onion rings, like that can happen. Like, yeah, why do they not do both?
Oh, but like PC Gamer is a big outlet, though. You know, they tend to do like these interviews with like these kind of small websites, but PC Gamer is a big one, and it was like well produced and stuff. And I don't know, it got like 100k views in like less than 2 weeks. I think that was good promotion. But yeah, you can just do both. I feel like they should just be like kind of bombarding us with news, if that makes sense. Like, hey, here's a trailer, here's a little video, here's a little live stream, and those feel like they haven't been doing that as much, which is kind of sad. I miss the live streams. I don't know, like y'all are always talking about the Arborstone live stream, but I enjoyed that. I miss like seeing the devs like just sit in a room and talk about the cool content that they're working on. Like with EOD, I had such a good time where they were like, oh, now we're gonna do a stream and show you this map. And again, they should have shown like the cool meta events as well, which they were like, we don't want to spoil it. But still, I enjoyed those live streams. I think it's sad that they don't do this anymore. Yeah, it's always fun to like react to them. Like it feels like they're weirdly enough, one of their most effective marketing, I think, is when they do like the balance streams. Like everybody kind of goes and watches the balance streams together. So like I just want more streams like that.
Yeah, I guess I just very much want to see both, really. You know, I want to see ArenaNet do their own promotion. I want to see them create media as well, like on their channel, on their live stream, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think it's great that they're, again, like they absolutely should be offering these demos to people who are like journalist outlets and obviously like other streamers as well. It's like really cool when like they get other people who play other games to get involved too. You know, one thing that's going super well right now is like they've got like Tarisland, the new kind of unhinged mobile MMO WoW clone thing. They've got Echo and Liquid from World of Warcraft doing like a little mini Race to Worlds First thing, clearing all the bosses there.
Really?
That's super cool. That's super exciting. It's working out pretty well for them, right? Yeah, it's a smart bit of marketing, right, for them to do this. Which I think is super cool that they're doing that. I'd love to see like Guild Wars 2 do the same as well. And again, I especially want to see them do it now because again, they are really up against it right now. You know, like they got some big competition. It's a big summer for MMOs. I think all the releases that are coming out here at the same time. So I really want ArenaNet to very much try to say, yeah, look at us. Like we've got something to offer, right? Like this is Guild Wars 2. Let's fucking go. Janthir Wilds. But yeah, I want to see some marketing. I want to see some hype coming out from ArenaNet. And I'm not getting it quite yet, to be honest. You know, I'm not getting it quite yet. This is a bit of an ArenaNet classic, but I guess we'll see what happens closer to launch, I suppose.
Yeah, they need to have some nice trailers as well. Like, just in general. Like, I think what they've done so far actually was pretty okay. Like, what there is. Again, I like that little PC Gamer video they did. I like the little trailer that they did. But it definitely feels like last week was... Like, I was on vacation, and I just got back, and it feels like I didn't really miss much. I know, I feel like they should be doing this barrage of like news right now, you know, and like little streams. And I like the Spear live stream. That was cool. Like where we all got together and watched like the Spears and stuff, and everybody was reacting to it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that this was a bit of a quiet week again because of the holiday, right? So that's probably like a big part of why
yeah,
there's a
that
little
makes
bit
sense.
less going
Mhm.
on, I'd say.
Makes
So
sense.
that's the lull, the calm before the storm, as it were. So yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. I'm definitely expecting some big news this week, right? Like we'll see next TeaTime, I guess, how that one turns out. But yeah, I'm expecting them to do some stuff coming up pretty soon, and I very much hope they show off the open world. I'm very much hoping they show off like some more about stuff like the player housing, right, and some of the other features of the expansion, like maybe the Warclaw 2 a little bit, like all that kind of good stuff. But yeah. This is going to be like a bit of preemptive feedback as well. I do want to see bigger content drops on expansion launch, though. Like, this is the one thing I'm actually really worried about for Janthir Wilds, is that I feel like I'm going to be done with it, like, within 24 hours. And I said this about Soto. People actually bullied me for saying this about Soto, but I'm just going to say it. I was right, okay? I was right, and I'll probably be right again here as well, which is a bit of a shame. Like, I feel like expansions... When an expansion drops... You want to go crazy. You want to start grinding, just blasting, playing all day, every day.
You want to take 3 days off work.
Exactly.
And fucking play 18-hour days.
Yes.
That's what you want to do.
That's what you want to do. But I'm a little bit worried that Janthir Wilds might not really have that on the actual launch. You know, like with the I would feel so much more confident about Janthir Wilds if the Legendary Spear was on release. I feel like I say this every TeaTime. I have to say it again. I feel so much better about it. Like if there was the spear, so you could like everyone could like unlock their spear together, and there was like a different spear skin per profession as well. Oh my god! Imagine if there was a spear on Elementalist that like changed color depending on your attunement. That would be fucking based. Okay, I'm not sure if they can even do that technology wise, but imagine if they could. It would be good.
Yeah, just having like grindy goals to go for, you know. I mean, something that I always like about Ghost 2 is how the grind is very optional. You don't have to play 18 hours a day for 3 days to have a good time, you know. But it's cool to have that there for people like us who want to like go hard, for sure.
I do want to go hard. It's gonna be good. But anyway, I guess it's a good place to kind of wrap up. A little bit of a marketing thing at the end. I think we're done. A little bit of a shorter TeaTime than usual. You know, it's a micro TeaTime, a speed run TeaTime, but nonetheless, it's good to be back. And of course, there will be more TeaTimes in the future. I'm sure the news is about to pour onto us. Very exciting times. But anyway, that's gonna just about do it for us gamers. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys have enjoyed the show, enjoyed the content. Yeah. Say hello to these wonderful guests, and we'll get ready to say goodbye to them. But of course, we have to outroduce them first. So, let's go. We have fresh back from TwitchCon, famous streamer, influencer, networker, Lara. We're all too unimportant for her now. We're plebs. We're worthless.
Totally.
Does not feel good. But anyway, what's going on? You're back.
I had a good trip.
What are you doing?
I went to the UK after. Like, I went to TwitchCon, and then I went to see some guildies. We watched Severance. We binged all of Severance. It was good.
Good call. Good show.
It's like my favorite kind of holiday where you just go to someone's house and you just binge a TV show. Actually, it was good. Everybody, my name's Noranancy. I like Guilders too. I stream Guilders too at twitch.tv/Noranancy. And I make YouTube videos as well. Yeah. Also on youtube.com/Noranancy.
Boom. There you go. Look at the link. Click on the link. Enjoy the link. And of course, we also have Nike.
Hello.
Nike was always right about everything.
I'm always
Tell us
right,
about that.
But sometimes too soon. Sometimes people aren't ready for it, but they come around eventually. It sucks, but it's the price you pay to be a prophet, you know.
Yeah. It's kind of like a Paul Atreides thing. Like in
yeah, you get run out of town
yeah.
sometimes with a mob with pitchforks chasing you, but in the end, they recognize that you were right. But yeah, you should you know. Got some fun stuff going on my stream. Some Zwift racing, Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2, all of that, and fun videos on my YouTube. And then, you know, banger tweets if you want to stay informed on what's going on Twitter. Yeah, there you have it. So be sure to follow and subscribe to all these gamers, watch all the content. And of course, there's going to be more TeaTimes. There are more TeaTimes. You can go back and watch them. You can subscribe and follow and like and comment to watch the next ones. It's just going to be a wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed the stream, enjoyed the TeaTime. We will see you next time. Take it easy, gamers. We're out of here for now. Boom.